You don't look around the house saying, how can I use my new screwdriver? You figure out what the problem is and then figure out whether the screwdriver will help you. And right now people are sitting there going, how can I use AI? As opposed to what problems do I have? What is sucking up my time? What is inefficient? Can AI help with that? So they're sitting there trying to figure out how to use AI first rather than looking at the problem and then seeing whether AI is the right solution for it. It's a tool.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm joined by Alan Edwards. He's the CISO at NFF, a company serving state and local governments, universities, and small federal agencies. Alan is already deep into using AI for all kinds of interesting applications like marketing, sales, and staffing. So I'm excited to dive in and see how he's actually using AI in the real world and driving real outcomes. At RevGenAI, we build outbound and thought leadership podcast systems for B2B founders. And this show is where we're diving into how leaders like Alan are actually driving real outcomes. Alan, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Good to be here.
So can you just first and foremost explain to us really what NFF focuses on and really give us like a little bit of an overview of your position, really like what you guys do?
Okay, so we're a B2B company based out of Washington, D.C. Our client base is sort of Maryland, D.C., Virginia, West Virginia, that sort of area, although we have some outliers. Primarily, it's state and local government, universities, and like a dozen different small federal agencies. But we have some commercial clients and nonprofits and utility companies and a smattering of other things.
Yeah. And how would you kind of describe, the kind of client that NFF serves best? Like what makes those accounts worth the effort for you guys?
They tend to be larger organizations, have their own internal IT departments. We use a sort of co-manage system on things. We're big into high-end networking with Cisco, complex networking. We're currently rebuilding the Wi-Fi for Dulles National Airport, which is like 1 million plus square feet, which is obviously not a simple flat network. We also do cybersecurity work for people, configuring lots of systems, that sort of things. We have a staffing side for projects and people being in there as a sort of 2 or 3 days a week sort of situation, whereby they don't have the man hours available or they don't have the expertise and this sort of things. The difference being the people that we put in there are backstopped by a lot of engineers on our side. So if there's something they can't do without any additional procurement type things, they can easily reach back out and get, a very, very highly certified Cisco engineer to help them out with things. And then we also do compliance work. So I'm working on compliance with a couple of federal agencies, and they're working towards their zero trust sort of things. So it's a whole mix, but it's generally co-managed. We're not going in, we're not a traditional MSP going in doing everything. We're going in and filling the gaps that they have, either in number of man hours or expertise into highly specialized technical areas.
Yeah. I'm really curious because I've spoken with a couple of B2B companies that focus mainly on government contracting. I'm always fascinated by how companies like yourself really create more business for yourself. Is it mainly network based, or how do you usually create those new intros into new opportunities?
We've been around since I think 96, so we have a lot of connections in a lot of places. Federal government contracting obviously kind of tanked last year with the political situation around here, and it was especially bad in the DC area. But the state and local is still very, very strong. We're watching RFPs. We get notified of RFPs from various organizations. We're on a lot of purchasing mechanisms, so we get notifications through those. And we have people watching those. We also work with state and local governments to figure out what do they need. The tap dance there is to work with them enough to identify what they need, but not with them enough such that you're not allowed to bid on the contract. Because if you write the RFP, you're not allowed to bid on it. So it's a bit of a tap dance sometimes, but we have a lot of connections in places. We tend to deal with as high up the food chain as we can. So we deal with the sort of West Virginia Office of Technology rather than every state agency. And we put things in there which flow down to every state agency, as opposed to trying to attack the individual state agency as a prospect. It frequently involves us dealing with the individual ones, but what we're offering has already been blessed from above to make it much easier.
Yeah, of course. It's definitely B2B prospecting and B2B sales can be complex, but when you get the right decision maker involved, then it makes it a whole lot easier. I'm curious, what is your main strategy for expanding your network, for starting those new conversations, especially with all the noise around, every industry is getting more and more crowded with AI and everybody trying to blast their message. How do you really see, getting in front of these higher end decision makers really working these days in 2026?
So there's only a sort of couple of things that we do where we walk in with AI first, is the idea. Because we're not a software development place. So I spend a lot of time talking with C-suite and directors and that sort of things on how they could use AI in that place. But what I find is there is a fundamental problem with AI. And, I use it for a lot. I am very pro using it. If you are an electrician walking into a house because you've been called in, you don't look around the house saying, how can I use my new screwdriver? You figure out what the problem is and then figure out whether the screwdriver will help you. And right now people are sitting there going, how can I use AI? As opposed to what problems do I have? What is sucking up my time? What is inefficient? Can AI help with that? So they're sitting there trying to figure out how to use AI first rather than looking at the problem and then seeing whether AI is the right solution for it. It's a tool. It's a tool like any other. It's a very complicated, very useful, very handy, multifaceted tool, but it's a tool. It's not a silver bullet. It's not a golden solution to everything. And I just see so many people there trying to shoehorn AI into everything because kind of that's what the C-suite or directors have said, without actually looking to see whether it makes sense or not.
I really like that perspective because it can be a very big rabbit hole when you start to follow your ideas instead of thinking about exactly what outcome you're driving or what problem you are. And I can attest to myself that I've wasted many, many hours getting into those rabbit holes, and it can be fascinating because it is such an advancement in technology. But I like that framework of the screwdriver, thinking about the problem that you have first instead of the tool that you have, and seeing how to apply it. So take me through, because like on this podcast, we focus fundamentally on marketing and sales in 2026. How are you applying AI? I know you mentioned, aiding your sales team and enhancing what they do instead of trying to completely replace it. Can you give us some examples of how you're actually applying AI right now inside of RFF?
Yeah, well, one of the coolest things that AI can do and a screwdriver can't is you can actually present it with the problem and ask, how can AI help me solve this problem or optimize it? And then you say which LLM, because they're not all made the same. They will do different things in different ways. And it'll actually come up with a solution on how it can be used to optimize things. I talked with our chief revenue officer on the sales process and sort of walked through the steps with him. And it's very interesting. It starts before you actually sort of walk into a customer. That's like way down the chain. First of all, you can use things like Perplexity to figure out what should you be selling by putting in your current company strengths, that sort of thing. Perplexity is a very nice one because it queries the web real time, and it also gives you the references for where it gets the information. So it's not just inventing stuff; it gives you the references of the things it's putting up. It gives me a lot more faith in what it's saying. But you can go through there, and it can do the research on what the market demand is, what current customers you have based on what the other ones in the area. So you could say, we have X, Y, Z different universities, and we cover this market area. What are similar universities or higher education in this area? And that's get you your lead generation, get you your list of people to try and attack. You can also use it to get all the contact information for people as much as is available publicly. You can also do it if you are looking at a university. You can have it generate a research paper for you based on what is the chancellor talking about with respect to, ABC that your company does. What are potential revenue sources they have? What sort of institution are they? Are they R1, R2, R1, L2 sort of research university? Are they a community college? Because you don't want to walk in suggesting multiple compliances because you have different research areas getting their funding from different areas. So this one has to be HIPAA, this one has to be CMMC, et cetera, if they're a community college, because that's not happening. They know you're not talking to them, and that's an immediate turnoff. If you are doing, not for us, because we're a B2B, but if you're more of a B2C type things, agentic agents are great for appointment setting. It's, they don't take time off. They keep churning through things. You feed them the lead list, and it will just keep churning through trying to set appointments. So that saves on head count. It saves on time and effort. It can pre-qualify people, et cetera, and it's very realistic these days. It doesn't sound like you're talking to a computer, like it did a few years ago. Like I said, research documents are the perfect thing for generating the sales PowerPoint. All the funding sources, what type of university are they, what size are they, because that defines their budget. What sort of things do they focus on? Type a bunch of that and your own stuff into something like Canva, and you've got your PowerPoint for the presentation. You can put in a template for your company, so corporate style. Then during the meeting, have something taking notes for you. You can load that and your notes into something like Notebook LM and generate a nice little sort of follow-up email with task lists and action items, so you're all on the same page after the meeting. All of these things are using AI to both increase the depth of meeting you can get and the value of the meeting, which shortens the sales cycle, allows the customer, the client, to know you're talking to them and talking about them, not just a generic, we do everything for everybody sort of meeting. And you end up with no action items, no follow-ups, no good thing to actually go through. You walk out with possibly a new friend, but not actually new business. And then, proposal generation. You can load in, past proposals, past performances, some quotes, this sort of things into something like Perplexity and easily get a very nice proposal, because the proposal is always way more than just the Excel spreadsheet of how much it costs. And you can check all the boxes. If you're doing an RFP, you can load in your response and the RFP and get it to cross-reference. Have I answered every question in this RFP? Because there's a lot of times when you answer those things, you miss out one thing and you are automatically disqualified. And that's just annoying, having spent so much time on an RFP. So various AI situations can help considerably in streamlining these and getting more depth and a better product. I do think that it's almost assumed you're using AI now in your proposal generation, because the time frame between them releasing RFPs and expecting the response is drastically reduced. So I think they assume that you're using some systems to streamline the process.
You laid out a lot of good tips there, starting from prospecting all the way to converting and generating proposals. I think that from what I see, information has not been the bottleneck. And now things are just moving faster and faster with AI. You can apply it to every single problem that you encounter. in your function, your work, can be augmented and sped up in so many ways. But from what I see, still, there's always still like an execution gap. You can have the best plan, you know all the tools, you can do all the research. AI can make that super easy, but sometimes it still comes down to needing to actually know what to do, how to do it well, and then actually to do it right. And so, what I'm really curious about is what challenges you guys run into when it comes to creating more opportunities with, say, federal agencies, because that's really interesting to me. Is like to think about, okay, well, we have this amazing opportunity with technology right now. Still, what's the real bottleneck here? What's the real challenge that is kind of slowing that growth for you guys?
Yeah, well, federal agencies and state and local government, these sort of things, they run on preset budgets. So even if you walked in and said this building is on fire, unless they had the money for a fire engine, it's just going to burn. They can put the money in, right now it's 2026. So they're probably working on the 2028 budget. That's the way it works. So unless you can actually migrate something from one area to another, it's a very, very long sales cycle. You have to identify with them the need and the area that you're working on and work with them to get the right sort of bucket numbers in there and all that sort of things. So it's a very long cycle. But what you can do with the AI research, because as you said, the amount of data, having the data available is not the problem. It's the amount of data is usually too much. That's the issue. It's too much and it's too dispersed. So if you can use an AI research tool to figure out what are the universities or the agencies, goals, what are their objectives, what executive orders, be they state level or federal level, what are they being told they have to try and focus on? Because those are the areas that are going to get funding. They might not know what to do in that area. The example of that is, every agency should implement zero trust. Sounds great. And it's a really good idea, but there'll be a sort of demented laugh coming out of the IT department when they hear that, because it's dozens, if not hundreds of things to implement that have to be cross-referenced and this sort of things. It is not, despite what vendors say, there is no silver bullet for it. You might have a very good solution for identity management, or a good one for devices, or a good one for data, but those are all completely different things. So it really comes down to figuring out where they are on the journey. And because the attackers are not static, we can't be static on our side. And it's a journey. It's not a destination. At no point are you going to sit there and go, zero trust is done. Check. It's not that way. It's like being a better driver or a faster runner. If you're running races, you want to keep getting faster. There's no point to you go, no, I'm fast enough now. I'm happy with third. You're going to keep trying. You're going to keep trying to do better. That's the way it works with all the cybersecurity stuff, the zero trust, everything in this area. But I think that AI, more than any other recent innovation, has identified that data is the most important thing, and data governance. Not having AI looking at everything, because you don't want to have the AI looking at everything for all people. You want to have good governance, which means deleting old stuff, because you don't want to train it on old, outdated information. Especially when you've had migrations in the past whereby the date on the file may no longer be accurate because you moved it from one system to another. So it got time stamped at that move date, as opposed to 10 years, 15 years beforehand. Data governance has become more and more important, and the data is what you have to protect. You have to identify who's coming in, where they're coming in from, control what they can access, and then you can actually get access to the individual data that they need, and just the data they need, not everything. But, everything that I work for is based around cybersecurity and governance and compliance. So I'm very much into training the sales team, teaching them how to anonymize data if they're using it in an LM. So rather than listing all of our customers into ChatGPT or something, you put in the customer types, you put in market segments, rather than putting in you don't put in our sort of previous quotes and proposals. It's anonymized. You don't even have to put in our company name. We generally use Acme Corp. You know, we're used to the cartoons. You know, as long as we don't get Roadrunner as the answer, we're fine. So it's a lot of things all have to cross connect and to work together and to be efficient. But fundamentally going at it thinking AI is the solution, now what's the problem, is just the wrong way around. You've got to think what the problem is and figure out, is AI going to help, hinder, or whatever in this? And then, like I said, the nice thing is you can actually ask these LLMs, how could AI help me with this problem? Sometimes the answer that comes back, you look at it and go, it's not really helping a heck of a lot. I'm better off not using you for this. Other times, like, well, damn, that looks like a good idea. Then you ask it which engine to use, and then you ask it to write prompts for you to be put into the other engine. And that gets people from zero experience up to actually being functional with it in a incredibly short period of time. And the more they use it, the more they'll self-identify things where they think what could be a good idea, or Perplexity, or ChatGPT, or NotebookLM, or even the push Copilot. Depends what they're using.
Yeah, I think you laid out again really, really good tips, especially for somebody who's maybe not as deep as you and I in AI yet. Some good frameworks for them to start to think about how to approach it instead of getting overwhelmed, because it can be very overwhelming. And I also really like the tip because, of course, we can try and minimize risk and in creative ways. And I really like the idea of anonymizing your interactions with AI, even if you've selected the privacy setting. I'm sure that, we don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. And that's a good strategy as well to continue to be able to retain that separation from, what your internal strategy is versus what's known publicly. And what I really like to do is also just think about, I like to ask this question because it really helps distill the exact problem that you're focused on. Because again, like you've been saying this whole entire conversation, if you just have clarity on the problem that you're solving, all your solution building goes around that. Like if you could remove one bottleneck from the sales process over the next 12 months, like I know you mentioned the sales cycle is very long, and that may not be something that you can really improve on, but what would be the bottleneck that you would focus on? Is it like lead generation, lead qualification? What would it be?
Well, I think lead generation and lead qualification, because the amount of data that's out there these days, are pretty much the same. You want to generate qualified leads, not just a list of people or a list of companies. And I think that the AI research that you can do to get that list is so much more than an individual could do or a group could do, because it can look at speeches and board meeting minutes, as well as state funding sources that are available, and map those to your products or offerings that you have, to try and go, okay, rather than I'm going to talk to University ABC, like, University ABC, they have the option of getting this grant from these people and this funding from this federal source, which will fund these areas if we word it like this. And that is a focus of both their CIO, given the recent speech he gave, and the dean of the college or dean of the university, because of these speeches that they gave, and the board meetings of that were out, the 990s, the 10K, depending on what sort of organizations it is. You can funnel all that in to actually send them an email or a phone call where you're talking to them about things you know are their priorities from the beginning, just to get the conversation going. And if you can walk in saying, I noticed you have a flat tire, you're much more likely to help them sort of fix a flat tire, as opposed to not knowing if they've got a car or not. It's all about personalizing the approach. And I think it's honestly exactly the same as the malicious actors are doing. They are doing exactly the same research. So which you'll see now, your phishing emails that turn up are way, way more personalized. And you're no longer looking for dumb spelling errors and stuff like that. I could easily generate custom emails by feeding in a list of names. And I wanted to reference a conference where they were at recently and talk about how we are so glad we met there. Any speaking engagement they have. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to connect with you when you were speaking at so-and-so. And these sort of things makes it a very, very personalized email for these phishing emails and gets them to click that link. They're doing it their side. And they're also, because they're using the economies and efficiencies on that side of things, they now have more time in their day. So rather than tagging the Fortune 1000, they can tag the Fortune 5000 because they have more time in their day. And they can push their business objectives downstream to a wider range of things. So it's helping both sides, but then being helped doesn't really help us.
Yeah. I think those are again like some interesting examples. I heard about this and it makes sense a lot that a lot of times the most innovative approaches and use of technology come from malicious activities first, and then it trickles down. It has that downstream effect to how businesses operate. And so this is exactly our approach when it comes to how we prospect as well. As everything should be personalized, everything should be and AI enabled so that we can understand the person that we're speaking to as much as possible before we even interact with them, so that the approach is right, because people are inundated with so much noise that you need to be able to create the right message at the right time, be able to actually cut through. And this is exactly the strategy that we use as well. And I really like this this focus. Of course, generating leads is not the issue. It's really about also the qualification of the leads. But yeah, just to wrap things up here, if you were to speak to somebody who's just starting out in your industry, and maybe not have all the experience and all the awareness of how to identify problems and how to really think pragmatically through a solution, and especially in my personal experience, sometimes when you work with AI, you don't really understand the way it's solving the problem anymore, and you don't get that actual experience of thinking and learning how to solve problems. So if you were sitting across from somebody who's just starting out, just starting to learn how to build experience, learn how to bring value, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them to look at their day, look at their week, look at their month, and write down all the tasks and things that suck up their time. And then for each of those, figure out, is this a long task that you would rather be a short task? Is this a short task I have to do again and again and again and again? Is this something where I think it could be done much deeper and much better than I can do because I don't have the time for it? And those would be the areas where I would start looking to see whether AI could actually help you or not. Yet again, it's still identifying the problem, identifying the work process you need to do. If you are making sort of the notes before a sales meeting, the amount of human connection you can get by mentioning that you're tired because you are dropping your kid off at Virginia Tech, if you know that that person went to Virginia Tech, is amazing. But also don't say you're dropping your kid off at Pitt if they were Ohio State. You know what I mean? Because that's just going to annoy them. So you got to know these things like a good salesperson. But that sort of connection comes after many meetings. But you can get that sort of connection and human connection way advanced. And most sales are emotional. They're not just technical. They buy from people they like. They buy from people they trust. And you should not be lying about where you dropped off your kid. But you can build up that level of trust and that level of connectivity so much faster by knowing what topics to talk about. Were they a volunteer earlier? Did they work at a different university? Did they work at a different government department where you have done work before? And you can talk to them about how the problems you solved there, because they may have seen those problems there. So that might not be the problem that you've come in to solve at their agency, but the fact you can talk intelligently about a problem they know about in a previous place and they have first-hand action of gives you first-hand credibility to them, which is better than customer references.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's really sound advice, because what I keep on coming back to is that human psychology is not going to change. The way that we interact with each other, it may be augmented with technology, but the things that create a connection, trust, these things stay the same. And this is like how we're also basing our approach and how we're advancing our services, is to really focus on what fundamentally, moves business forward, what creates that connection, what creates that trust, and how can we facilitate that. And yeah, I really appreciate all the insight that you brought to the conversation today. I'll leave your links down below, so anybody who's wanting to reach out to you or to NFF can find you. And yeah, thank you again, Alan, for the conversation.
Well, thanks. It's been fun.